We start with a roundtable session, and our speakers will discuss on the factory yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We'd like to introduce you Mr. David Ripple as the moderator of this roundtable session. And also, please welcome our valuable speakers, Professor Jorge Bauer, Mrs. Kerstin Schiefer, Mr. Herbert Prock, Mr. Aliriza Ersoy, and Mr. Roland Zomer.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I wish you all a very warm welcome to the first event of this day. We already heard the title. It's a panel discussion, and I'd like to introduce the board a little bit more in detail. To my right side, we have Ms. Kerstin Schiefer from the Department of Business Economics from the Austrian Trade Union for Production Workers, ProG. Please welcome her with a short applause. Thank you. The next member of the panel today is Mr. Roland Sommer, the Managing Director of the platform Industry 4.0 of Austria. The next member of the panel today is Mr. Ali Riza Ersoy. He's the Executive Committee member and Deputy General Manager of Siemens in Turkey. The next member of the panel is Professor Jorge Bauer. He's today the one who traveled the longest distance from Argentina. He is a professor at the Universidad Técnica Nacional in Buenos Aires and guest professor at the TU Vienna. And the last member has excused himself for today. Mr. Herbert Brock is the head of corporate social affairs at Volkswagen Argentina. He couldn't make it, but he sent us a video message which we'll play afterwards. My name is David Ripple. I'm a computer scientist. I graduated at the Technical University of Vienna. And for me, it is very interesting to be here today to moderate this discussion because, as we heard yesterday in the discussion, in the talk about big data and Industry 4.0, computer science is right in the center of this paradigm shift, and for me it's especially interesting because it's my field of expertise. The goal for today's event is to engage in an interdisciplinary discussion with our panel here and highlight not only the technical chances and challenges but also the other aspects like economical, governmental or social of this innovation. I will now invite each member of the panel to give a short presentation. We have set a slot for 10 minutes per person to give us a foundation about their beliefs and their viewpoints, and then I would like to jump right into the discussion, and also we accept engaging discussion afterwards. Ms. Schiefer,
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting or thinking about the Austrian trade unions as well and the workers' perspective. I think I can skip my first with my name and my contacts. The topic of today is the factory yesterday, today and tomorrow, the end of work or a better work organization for all. And I would like to bring a workers and the union perspective within this. If we talk about work and digitalization, normally we see two scenarios. The first one is the more negative one. It says that 47% of all jobs are susceptible with computerization. That means every second job in the US, and it's quite similar for Germany and Austria as well. That says the famous Oxford study from Fry and Osborne. There will be a loss of whole industrial sectors. Jaimovic and Siu state that jobless recovery in the USA in 2015, and 48% of experts envision a future in which robots and digital agents have displaced significant numbers of both blue and white-collar workers. So if 48% sees it in a negative way, there are others who state the positive way as well. So what do they claim? A study from 2011 states that within the last 150 years, the technological change produced, for this study in England and Wales, a lot of jobs. The physical labor was reduced from 23.7% in 1971 to 8.3% in 2011. Lorenz and his colleagues stated in 2015 that there will be a gain of 350,000 new jobs alone in Germany, just with the digitalization. And there will be a lot of indirect effects. As an example, there was an increase of 1,500 new job descriptions just because of the intervention of personal computers in the 1980s. So there are always two sides on the medal. And just the future will show us which scenario is the most probable one. But what we know is how the technological inventions influence our workers' lives now. And therefore, I would like to show you at first a short video. It was produced by colleagues, shop stewards from Austrian companies from Austria while educational program, and then talk about a study, an actual study from 2017.
Video here. Why not? Because it's this. Yeah.
No, I think the VLC
No.
player.
Why not? Yeah.
You see, if you're on the technical university,
No. Maschinenbau, dann nichts funktioniert. Okay.
Ja.
um optimal auf einen produktiven Tag vorbereitet zu sein. Sie träumt von vergangenen Arbeitswelten. Die erste industrielle Revolution entstand durch mechanische Produktionsanlagen, die von Dampfmaschinen und Wasserkraft angetrieben wurden. Die Elektrifizierung stellt die zweite industrielle Revolution dar und ermöglichte die arbeitsteilige Massenproduktion. Die dritte industrielle Revolution setzte durch die Entwicklung von Computern ein. Maschinen übernahmen ganze Arbeitsschritte. Die vierte Revolution bringt die komplette Vernetzung mit sich. Alle Maschinen kommunizieren über das Internet miteinander. Man spricht von der Industrie 4.0. Susi wird von ihrem Smart-Armband aufgeweckt, als sie sich gerade in einer Leichtschlafphase befindet. Sie startet gut erholt in den Tag und macht sich für die Arbeit fertig. Vor ihrem Haus wartet sie darauf, dass sie abgeholt und zur Arbeit gebracht wird. Selbstfahrende Autos errechnen anhand von Algorithmen, wie alle am effizientesten zu ihren Arbeitsplätzen kommen. In der Share Economy haben Unternehmen sich darauf spezialisiert, Ressourcen, die nicht dauerhaft benötigt werden, gemeinschaftlich zu nutzen. Bei der Firma angekommen, wird Susi von einer Kamera identifiziert und mittels ihres Armbands automatisch eingeloggt. Ein Roboter übergibt ihr eine Datenbrille, die sich mit ihrem Armband vernetzt und ihr die heutigen Aufträge anzeigt. Sie hat einen Arbeitsplatz im Bereich der elektrischen Montage zugeteilt bekommen. Eine technische Ausbildung hat sie zwar nicht, aber die Datenbrille und intelligente Handschuhe liefern ihr alle Informationen, die sie zum Ausführen der Aufgaben benötigt. Susi mag ihren Job, hätte aber gern mehr Kontakt zu Kollegen. Der persönliche Austausch unter Mitarbeitern ist nicht mehr nötig, da alle Informationen durch die Datenbrillen übermittelt werden. Als sie ihren Montageauftrag erfolgreich abgeschlossen hat, fährt Susi wieder per Carsharing nach Hause. Pflichtbewusst geht Susi schlafen, um auch am folgenden Tag als möglichst effiziente Arbeitnehmerin zu funktionieren. Schöne neue Arbeitswelt.
Thank you. Oh, that's fine. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Not working.
Yeah. Okay. The new one. Okay. This.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
okay. Yeah, this video tried to show you a short view. How could it be in future? Ehrlich and his colleagues made a study about and had a look at the digital precarization, new vulnerabilities, and degradation in the industrial working environment. As you can see on the title, it's a German study. No, I think no English study would have a title like that. It shows us the diffusion of digital technologies, and they result in developments in professional qualifications and alter health situation of the workforce. And the study assumes that the current tendencies in organizations are being intensified, like flexibility, rationalization, and precarization. What were the findings? They found out that there will be a huge devaluation of know-how within the workforce, because more and more complex tasks are hidden behind easy-to-use interfaces. So the data classes are showing you what to do, the gloves are telling you how to handle everything. There will be no long-term know-how necessary anymore. The computer provides it for you. High qualifications are not necessary anymore. Less scope of actions and problem-solving abilities necessary. No more surveillance and control tasks for the workforce. Fewer specialized knowledge. You need more context knowledge within the company. And there will be new demands. One of them is you need a mental robustness, because the machine is controlling you, not the way around as we know it now. We are controlling the machines. And a high faith in technology, for sure. And it puts a huge pressure on the workers' health. There will be an increase of workload, because as you all know, as we saw before, everything technically is not working perfectly right now. So the workers have to fill in the data gaps while the production, and it's not going hand in hand with an increase in their job description. So they have more work and get nothing out of it. Remaining jobs are getting more and more monotonous, because the lenses and everything is telling you how to do your work. You don't have to think anymore. The necessity of more movement and longer concentrativeness. And as an example, with the data classes, we all think about how efficient they are and how cool they are and what they can do, but you have less mobility because you have to be connected all the time, and you have an additional weight on your shoulders and on your head. I don't know if you have ever tried one of these data classes. They are quite heavy. And the workers have a lot of fear to be controlled, so they work around all these systems. You have strict specifications via sound and vision, creates mental stress, loss of social interactions, as we saw it in the video as well. And one of the main problems we are having right now with unregulated and uncoordinated IT, this leads to management by data logistics and not management by thinking around data center and what you see. As a result, we are facing a downgrading of qualifications because you don't need them anymore. That creates less valuable jobs. If you're a technician in the production, or if you bring things from A to B, it's a less valuable job. Therefore, you need less educated workforces, less income, for sure, I have to say, as a trade unionist. And with less incomes, you create less spending power within the economies. Therefore, and economies, if you don't have a good workforce, will be less competitive. And we should never forget, cars, don't buy cars. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Schiefer, for that viewpoint. I find it very interesting to see this conflict of interest. On the other side, you have the optimization, for example, through data classes and the raise in effectivity and efficiency. And on the other side, you have the interest of the workforce, which is not to have a full-time surveillance on their the head and on their shoulders. I already noted some questions which I'll save for afterwards. May I ask Mr. Sommer now for giving your presentation?
Thank you very much for the invitation here, and I'm happy to speak here. Today I have the hat of a policymaker, and I have to do something that one should never do when starting a presentation. And the first thing is I will convey my personal ideas to policymakers, so it's not the official ideas of the Austrian government, although I talked to some representatives of the ministry. And the second point is that due to the time constraints, I'm not going to talk about challenges. And I hope this is okay, because I'm aware, I hope that all of you know the challenges like digitization in production, like new business models, security, social issues, etc. And to start with, just one slide on what I actually represent, and that's the Platform Industry 4.0. And I just want to highlight that within the platform there are 6 founding members, and that is one ministry, that is employees associations and employers associations at the same time, and they have decided to form such a kind of platform. When talking about digitization, I would like to introduce to you 2 policy concepts I regard very important. The first one is called system innovation, and that's based on a study of the OECD. And the basic idea is about system innovation, that you have a social technical system and you would like to make it more innovative. And there you need a set of different policy instruments, and together you hopefully manage to make this transfer of the system. And that means you have to rethink policy making in order to deliver growth, but also well-being. And there are some logics in this policy concept of system innovation. One is you have to involve actors outside the government, that is key, like employees, employers associations, research, industry, NGOs, etc. It's about longer-term planning, and it's a mobilization of technology. It's about market mechanisms, but at the same time regulations, they are key, and social innovations also to solve these complex societal problems in a set of interdependent and hopefully also interacting components, and as a whole this forms a social technical system. So this would be the first policy concept I would like to introduce, and the second one is called smart specialization. And in smart specialization, industrial, educational and innovation policies are combined. And they are specific for each region. A region in Argentina might have different specificities than a region in Turkey, in Austria, etc. And the idea is to set the ideas upon these regional strengths and focus just on a limited number of these strengths. And the idea is to have more effective spending, to create synergies, to eliminate fragmentation when you look at industries and different instruments, but also to have some kind of mapping, benchmarking, monitoring, evaluation, etc. So these two policy concepts I try to include in one big ecosystem, in one big picture. And the idea is, I'm afraid you can't read it, I will explain it to you. We have three different layers. On the top, it's the international layer, because there are a lot of things that go on the international level. Then you have the national level layer and the regional layer. In Europe, we also have the specificities of the European Union, so there are a lot of activities on the European Union with regard to coordination, etc. And for instance, there's a European platform of national platforms, but there are also equivalent platforms, Industry 4.0 in the US, in China, in Korea, in Japan, in Russia, etc. And it's good to have this interaction. It's about RTI capacity. In Europe, we have Horizon 2020. It's a very big research funding program with about 70 billion euro, where research is funded throughout Europe. We have a very big initiative, it's called Digitizing European Industry, with data protection, regulations, etc. And a very important international part is norms and standards. Most of the norms in an Industry 4.0 context are international norms via IOS, ISO norms or IEC norms. And then you're on the national level, and that is about system innovation, because the Austrian government and many other governments as well try to make the whole system more innovative. And when you look at that, you have different policy sectors that are relevant for that, and the sort of the challenge is to have this kind of whole of government approach. And that can be also on the national level to increase the RTI capacity with funding instruments, research funding instruments. I represent the national platform, Industry 4.0. Universities play a key role in the technology transfer in any given country. Education and training is extremely important, starting from schools, vocational training, further training of adults, etc. There are a lot of networking events organized by the public sector to have this technology transfer, for instance, from big companies to small and medium enterprises. Tax incentives can play a crucial role. Infrastructure, including research infrastructure, is key, but it can also be broadband and other kind of things. Startups is everywhere, and startup support is extremely important. And of course, labor market interventions, where as a policymaker you can also help people that are unemployed to find a new job with different ways to have these interventions on the labor market. And on the regional level, you have the same issues, but more with sort of this smart specialization context. For instance, in Western Austria, there is a province that very much focuses on smart textiles. In Upper Austria, it's on machinery. In Styria, in the southern parts of Austria, it's on electronic-based systems, etc. And that means that a lot of supporting instruments are being built upon these regional strengths. And the challenge of policymakers is you have on each of these levels a whole of government approach, but you need to interact between the regional and the national level, and also take into account the international level. And that is the challenge everywhere in the world. I also have a small role at the OECD, and there we can also see, and there are many discussions of what types of governance structures are important to come up with these ideas. And I would like to finish by that. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Sommer, for your presentation. I'm looking forward to discuss the role of the policymakers in detail afterwards, especially how can the policymakers can enable this innovation. I now invite Mr. Ersoy to give his presentation. Please, thank you.
I have no presentation. Mr. President and the Scientific Committee, very kind of you for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be back here after 40 years in the university, because I'm also a graduate of the Technische Universität Wien, so it's really a pleasure to be here with you. So ladies and gentlemen, in this 10 minutes, I would like to concentrate on the transition to 4.0. This is actually the motto of the symposium, right? And I will try to share my experiences, what happened in my country, in Turkey, in the last 2 to 3 years. I have been working by Siemens in Turkey now 32 years. At the end of this month, I will be graduating from Siemens as well. But I will continue to be active on the subject, Industry 4.0. Actually, yesterday I had the chance to tell the history. I'm going to repeat it now. Sorry for the ones who were here yesterday also. Actually, as we all remember, the federal German government declared their roadmap of the subject in April 2013. Only 10 months after, as Siemens Turkey, we had a press conference in Istanbul, a large one, and we said that a tsunami is now beginning to move outside of, from Germany to outside of Germany, and the waves are going to hit our country as well. My country has already missed the first revolution, the second revolution, and the third revolution, sometimes by centuries and sometimes by 40, 50 years. And this time we should not miss the fourth revolution, actually. This was the motto of the press conference. And after that, we prepared the first Turkish documentation about the subject, what it means and how it will change the world. And then we had the website, which has been very successful. Nowadays, more than 1,000 hits happens with that website. So everybody who is interested in the subject in my country visits the website for the latest informations. After that, I personally had the chance to be active in events like this one here, around 150 times. So I had the chance to eye-to-eye connection, more than 35,000 industry people and more than 5,000 university students. So, coming to the subject, with all these exercises we have done, not only me, my colleagues in the company as well, and also as yesterday, companies like Bosch, they were also like GE, they were very active going around and trying to explain the story to the public. And then, of course, the question comes, how? The people, the industry people who understands what's going on, not 100%, but let's say partially, then they ask the question to themselves, how? The older generation of my age, so 60s or 60 plus, they are afraid. As we all know, 4.0 means actually digitalization of the industry in a very short term. So the older age, these are the second generation of the industry, or sometimes the third generation of the industry. They are afraid, so they prefer not to do something. But the next generation, so the leaders of the companies of, let's say, age of 40 plus, they are very interested. They see that there is something coming new, and if they do not do something for it, they will be lost. So the hopes are not from the 60 plus people, but the hopes is with the 40 plus generation. And then they come to us, and because my company is also a supplier for the subject, but also we demand the technologies which we do not have. So we are a supplier, at the same time we are the demand side. And actually we do not know how. because the subject is so new. We are speaking about 3 to 4 years now, and the first year was too early to learn something. Actually, what we have learned in the last 2 to 3 years, right? I mean, so new to the subject. And as we have seen by the lady, there is every time two sides, and we are all confused. But it's getting now clearer and clearer and clearer. Actually, to get digitalized for an industry, for an enterprise, is nothing else than the classical change. In the past, we had, you all remember, the ISO 9000, or we had Kaizen, or we had just-in-time processes, Six Sigma processes, and all these stuff at that time. They were very new, today no more, and they were very valuable. But this was the history. It is over now. But what we are going to do with the new subject is principally the same. We are going to get our company from one perspective to a digitalized perspective. That's all what we have to do. So the processes of change management will not change. It will be the same thing. I will come to that subject a little bit later. If they ask me how to do it, I try to say with all our experiences, I mean 30, 40 years of experiences of the change management in our companies, the processes are going to be the same. And what do we mean by that is that tone of the top. Tone of the top is the most crucial and the essential part of the joy. If the president of the company or the owner of the company does not believe in digitalization, then this company has no future, and any kind of change management processes will not help. So the number one point is the tone of the top. He or she has to believe that the company has to be transformed. If this happens, then almost 50% of the job has already been done. 50%. The rest 50% is as what we have done in the past. Please form a virtual team. It can be a real team or a virtual team. A real team at the beginning is not necessary. A virtual team would be also enough at the very beginning. What do we mean by that? As you know, Industry 4.0 is a very complex issue, very complex issue. So there is no profession which can be successful in that journey. We need inter-skill or interdisciplinary members of the virtual team. Industrial engineering, electronics, mechanics, mechatronics, commercial issues, legal issues. So every aspect has to be represented in that virtual team. Then the next step would be to prepare a road map. In one of our companies, as I mentioned yesterday, Vestel, this is an electronics company located on the Aegean coast of Turkey. They had already their Industry 4.0 roadmap for 3 years, and this was 1.5 years ago. So there are many companies who are really trying to run fast for this issue. Vestel is one of the example, then Arçelik second example, Ford Otosan the third example. There are so many. The roadmap will not be 100% correct at the very beginning, but it doesn't matter, because this is a journey and this will take a long time. Germany declared 4 years ago that their journey is going to take roughly 20 years. We all know that Germany is, the average industry of Germany is at 3.0 or maybe even a little bit higher. Our Turkey's industry is somewhere between 2.0 and 3.0. 2.0 is already done because electricity is everywhere. So this is not an issue anymore. But the automation is not done in all of our factories. So even Arçelik, one of the largest companies in Istanbul, international companies, only the headquarters is in Istanbul, they declared themselves to be 2.5. Even though they are so automized in their production, they believe that they are not better than 2.5. So there is a long way to go. This virtual team, as they try to prepare their roadshow, the first thing which they have to keep in mind is to bring their company, bring their production, but not only the shop floor, also from shop floor to the top floor, the whole enterprise has to be digitalized, vertically digitalized and horizontally digitalized, which means not only in the company, but all the stakeholders, from the distributors, from the suppliers and customers, recycling and all these processes has to be digitalized, so digitally followed has to become to that point. So they have to bring their 2.5 company at first to 3.0 company. So there's no way to jump from 2.5 to 3.5. There's no way. It is a journey and it has to be done in steps. So a frog leap approach wouldn't work in this case here. So the first thing which they have to plan, how do they bring 2.5 to 3.0? This is automation. The technologies are available since so many years, so it's getting cheaper and cheaper every year. Electronics is getting cheaper and cheaper every year. It's getting complexer and cheaper. So all what they have to do, automate the processes which are not automated yet. You do not need to automate the whole enterprise. In some cases, some processes can be done by human. There is no problem with that. But every process which can be automated has to be automated. So the roadshow has to begin with the automation, the missing automation. After that, depending on the company size, it may take 1 to 3 years estimation. Only after that we can begin to speak about 4.0, because without automation you do not have the chance to get data from the production. So the PLCs, you know, all these automation electronics has to be installed first so that you get data from the production line and, if possible, from the product itself. And then after that you begin with the 4.0. In Turkey we speak about 10 different technologies. I don't know how it is now in Austria, but we are speaking about 10 different technologies in the journey to 4.0. I'm not going to go through them now. And then the company may decide to begin with 1 or 2 technologies, for example. They do not need to apply every technology at the very beginning. It would cost too much. Most probably the human resources will not be available. So this has to be done in steps. As you just mentioned perfectly, there is the international aspect, there is the national aspect, and there is the regional aspect. In south part of Turkey, for example, textile is common. So the textile sector has their own needs and own strategies. So this means that the journey of textile industry can be and will be much different than the, let's say, metals industry. So they have to think in their region as well. So there is no common, let's say, answer to every sector. So what they have to do, choose the technologies which has more meaning for your sector, for your company, for your enterprise, and try to apply them. Then the question comes, who are the companies that I can buy these products, services, softwares, and all these things? TÜSİAD is the leading industrial organization in Turkey. Now we are trying to bring up the technology map of Turkey, which means from startups to SMEs and to the large enterprises. under these 10 technologies, who is able to supply something. I hope that this will be done in upcoming 3 to 4 months. And then after this map is done, we will have a speed dating sessions where the demanding companies, which means buyers, are going to come together with the sellers, which is then the suppliers. And if we can do that, then we all believe that there will be a kind of frog leap in that journey in Turkey. Additionally, and last, we are on the way to form an association. I was so pleased to hear my neighbor, you have already done, and ZMS is also one of the members, I believe. And the head of industry section of ZMS, I just heard, is also the president of the association. Nice to hear. And we just talked that after founding our association in Turkey, most probably the name will be Digitalization and Industry 4.0 Association of Turkey. Digit for Turkey will be the short name. Then we are going to get into contact and try to work together. I'm sure that there will be a lot to share with each other. But not only that, 2 months ago in Istanbul, we invited ESMT, European School for Management and Engineering. 3 professors were invited to Istanbul. We had a 2-day session, a very, let's say, dense 2 days. And we got the chance to discuss about the workers in the future, the manufacturing in the future, digitalization in the future, and such things. So we will be in the future not only regional, not only national, but for sure we will be also international with the help of that association as well. So at this phase, I want to thank you. If there will be some questions, we can then run further. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Erser, for your presentation, and especially for highlighting one thing, that the transition or the journey to 4.0 doesn't mean that everybody is close, that there are a lot of differences between companies, between nations, between regions, and not everybody is starting at the same point. I think that will be a very interesting topic for a later discussion. Now I want to invite Professor Jorge Bauer. Professor Bauer to give his talk. I will assist if needed in translation. Yeah, please.
Herzlichen Dank. Ich werde ein paar Worte auf Deutsch sagen. Das ist eine Sprache, die mir näher steht, und habe ein paar Worte auch auf Englisch vorbereitet, die ich lesen werde. Aber ich werde den Kollegen David bitten, dass mich stark mit der Sprache
Mr. Bauer said that he will now read some statements in English, and that afterward in the discussion I will support him with the translation.
Als erstes haben wir ein paar Bilder als Präsentation, die eigentlich schon von der Präsentation von der technischen Seite von gestern waren.
We start with some illustrations that actually are from yesterday's presentation, but we will use it right now again.
Eigentlich nur, um einen Kontext zu bilden, von welcher Sicht, von der technologischen Sicht, mein Blick startet.
Just to highlight his perspective from a technological side.
Ein bisschen abzurunden, was wir heute sprechen, das Thema, das uns alle von verschiedenen Seiten betrifft uns von der technologischen Seite.
Just to give an overview about the topics that we will to discuss.
Und wir können sagen, dass alle Experten, die wir befragt haben, glauben, dass die Entwicklung auf diesem Sektor exponentiell wachsen wird.
All experts that we ask share the opinion that the growth of this movement will be an exponential one.
Wir sehen auf dieser Grafik, und das ist meine Einstellung, dass Industrie 4.0 nicht eine Revolution ist, sondern eine Evolution von Computer Integrated Manufacturing zu Intelligent Manufacturing System, Multifunction Intelligent Factories, und heute sprechen wir von Industrie 4.0.
We'll see on this illustration that Industry 4.0 can you repeat the last statement, please?
Ist keine Revolution, sondern eine exponentielle Entwicklung.
It's not a revolution more than an exponential evolution.
Integration is much more than the sum of the parts. Our specialization is automation, but it's very important to see all the parts in relation with organization, economic aspects, and the theme that for me is very important is the human resource and the position that the human resource have in the organization. Als letzte wollte ich dieses Bild hier sagen, um ein bisschen zu verbinden, unsere Spezialität, das ist Automatisierung, mit der Entwicklung, die wir voraussehen.
I want to present this picture to highlight the connection that our specialization have with the topics we will discuss.
And we speak for automation, automatically, we think that this problem that we for if Industrial 4.0 is the end of the world or a better work orientation for all, have not an automatically solution. It's need to that many people work and think about. Gut, ich werde ein bisschen lesen, was ich geschrieben habe, vorbereitet habe auf Englisch und versuchen, diese Gedanken ein bisschen zu übertragen.
Yeah, we'll read some of my thoughts and statements I've prepared to underline this discussion.
At first, I will thank the collaboration from many colleagues that have helped to create this panel with experts of high level and different experience. So I can think the problem is through have a transdisciplinary vision. The idea of just to do a very short presentation that promotes the debate and present us some main ideas about the thing we subject. Many know that I am a passionate technologue. Today, my passion is the mechatronic and the automatization. Mechatronic is the integration from mechanical, informatic, and electronic. And I am a mechanic that go to informatic. But at hard technology and investigation, I was very interested and worry about the social issue that the implications of what technology we do and this impact of the social world. In my opinion, researchers in technology and science who work in the academy have even more responsibility than the rest of the mortal people science to have aware of our action are never neutral. We are sure that automation and automatic process whose evolution will follow an exponential curve, and we have to assume as humanity not only her benefits. We can see this theme of replace human labor with machine has multiple and complex X. We can see that the biblical mandate to work with the switch of our brain have surfaced from the implication and profound transformation. We can see that in essential aspect, automation and robotic replace human in routine works and unwan physical labor efforts. And we can see, if you walk to the factories, that not be losing those possibilities that concrete human complain when they are unable to that part of the job. The person have no problem to work physical better, he have another problem. He have the problem that he increment the worry, the possibility that in near or long future they will not have this job. And the problem was that the source incoming which implied practical and which source sustain his family. As example of my thinking about the human can do if they not have a job, as an example of what I think about what human can do if they not have to do a job, I repeat the task and physical effort. I tell you a personal experience in an exhibition of books in Buenos Aires in the year 2000. I am in the front of a conference of didactic robotics for a large number of teachers of many schools. And the question is now what the human used to when you not have a job because a robot made his work for present. My answer in this moment was when the human not must do many hours a repetitive job, he can come to the book exhibition and study. With this very resumed thing in the direction of the benefits of incremental productivity in the generation of goods and service than we exponentially generate with automation and robotic should be able to redirection that more and more human can reduce the classic work days and days and incrementate the other multiple life activities. On to face a substantial work in the direction, I have some personal ideas that I will not hit. As most engineering action will available have their advance and stability. The short words are not new. They are action that the humanity advance and apply, especially in the last 100 years. In summary, they go in the direction of the sociability of collective achieve and the sustained incrementation of productivity to generate products that meet human needs. It would be follows now to say that the recent period we see that much people have forget this schema, but the trends to reconcentrate will less and less in less hands. Excuse. Also, at last, in this brief personal presentation, I would like to say as technologist, as mechatronical researcher, that I am only convinced that socialization and distribution of wealth priority the needs of the grand majority of the world people in the village is not only an ethical imperative, it is a central part of the sustainable development for all the people of the global village. The responsibility of one person to do whose work in automation is present in that form, and it lies for me with greater intensity. Thank you und bitte Entschuldigung für mein Englisch. Ich hoffe, die Grundgedanken sind drüber gekommen und bei den Gesprächen werden wir das vielleicht besser übertragen können.
Yeah, thank you for the attention and please excuse my English, and I hope during the discussion we will find a way that we can discuss my thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Bauer, for your presentation, and especially for the one of the subtitles of your presentation is the transition to 4.0 the end of the work, or will we reach a better work organization for all? I think that gives us an interesting base for the upcoming discussion. We would like now to play the video of Herbert Brock, which cannot be here today, but he sent the video message, and so we can hear his beliefs.
Dann habe ich es leider nicht geschafft, nach Österreich zu kommen. Österreich stark verbunden, obwohl ich jetzt arbeite jetzt auch schon seit 14 Jahren, wie gesagt, in Volkswagen Argentinien und bin dort für Corporate Social Responsibility zuständig. Und Corporate Social Responsibility sorgenvoller Staatsbürger ist. Die Leute erwarten von einer Marke, insbesondere von einem internationalen Konzern, dass er auch für Verantwortung für bei dem die soziale Verantwortung eine deutliche Rolle spielt. Aus diesem Grund haben wir zum Beispiel eine ganze Fülle von Programmen entwickelt, um für die Ausbildung der Leute zu sorgen. Wir fangen im Kindergartenalter an, helfen dort mit unseren freiwilligen Gruppen, weil wir ja da hier oft nutzen. Im Mittelschulalter haben wir den Plan Dual, das duale Ausbildungssystem, aus Österreich kopiert und haben ein Abkommen mit 2 technischen HTLs, technischen höheren Schulen, und die Jungs und Mädels haben ihre theoretische Ausbildung in diesen Schulen und die praktische Ausbildung bei uns im Werk. Und alle, die aus diesem Programm hervorgegangen sind, haben entweder bei uns oder in der Wertschöpfungskette sofort Arbeit gefunden, weil sie praktisch viel besser ausgebildet sind als ihre Alterskollegen. Und auf Hochschulebene haben wir das Ganze noch einmal kopiert und haben gemeinsam mit der Technischen Universität, der staatlichen Technischen Universität, einen Lehrstuhl für Automobilindustrie eingerichtet. Eine Fachrichtung, die es vorher nicht gegeben hat, um die gesamte Automobilindustrie Argentiniens wettbewerbsfähiger zu machen und so bessere Zukunftschancen zu haben. All das ist unwahrscheinlich spannend und Sie sehen, es ist nicht 1:1 mit dem vergleichbar, was wir in Österreich vorfinden. Das Thema, das Sie heute diskutieren, betrifft natürlich die Automobilindustrie. Natürlich die Automobilindustrie in einem Land wie Argentinien in ganz besonderem Ausmaß. Ich würde sagen, in 2 Punkten. Zum einen die klassische Diskussion, die Sie während dieses Kongresses diskutieren werden. Inwieweit kann die Technologie Arbeitsprozesse unterstützen oder ist sie Feind von Arbeitsplätzen? Aber gerade in der Automobilindustrie gibt es schon noch sehr viele Bereiche, wenn ich an unser Werk in Argentinien denke, wo insbesondere Redehilfen oder Teilautomatisierungen wirklich helfen, schlechte Arbeitsplätze besser zu machen oder einfacher zu machen und so die körperliche Belastung deutlich zu reduzieren. Aber wesentlich intensiver, glaube ich, wird das Thema die Automobilindustrie betreffen, wenn ich daran denke, dass das ganze Mobilitätskonzept in einem großen Wandel begriffen ist. Da haben wir zum einen die Entwicklung, dass der klassische Verbrennungsmotor immer schneller und immer stärker von Elektroautos, Hybridautos verdrängt werden wird. Ich glaube, da machen wir uns noch keine Vorstellung, wie schnell das Ganze gehen wird. Aber über das hinaus glaube ich, dass das Mobilitätskonzept in Frage gestellt wird. Die Tatsache heute, dass der Benutzer gleichzeitig auch der Besitzer des Fahrzeuges sein muss, ich glaube, das ist kein Ammengebet für die Zukunft. Das ist, wenn Sie es wirtschaftlich betrachtet nehmen, auch ein ausgesprochen dummes Konzept. Ich nehme meinen Fall, ich fahre jeden Tag in der Früh um 7:30 ungefähr 20 Kilometer ins Werk, habe dort das Auto dann den ganzen Tag abgestellt. Das ist Kapital, das ruht und das sich nicht bewegt. Und am Abend fahre ich wieder die 20 Kilometer zurück zu mir nach Hause. In Zukunft, glaube ich, wird in meinem Fall nicht mehr, weil da bin ich ja hoffentlich schon in Pension, aber meine Nachfolger wird ein Elektroauto, Autopilot von Uber oder irgendjemanden in der Früh abholen, wird ihn ins Werk bringen. Er kann auf der Fahrt ins Werk noch einige Arbeiten erledigen, schon anfangen, seine Mails zu checken. Und dann kehrt das Autopilot-Auto wiederum zurück. Die Hardcore herstellen, die Tastatur, den Bildschirm, das Gehäuse eines Tablets, das macht einen Wert von, was weiß ich, nicht einmal 70 € pro Computer aus. Wenn die Intelligenz hineingesetzt wird, ist das Ganze dann plötzlich 1000 € wert. Wenn die Automobilindustrie nicht aufpasst, dann wird sie degradieren.
systems. It's not always easy, but we believe that this is the way forward. And I think, and Kerstin also already said it, if we do not take employees on the journey, they would not be innovative in the production line, for instance. And increasingly, it's not the technology itself, but how to implement the technology in a given production, in a company, that makes the change. And this organization of work, organizational culture, is something that cannot be copied from, let's say, China or other parts of the world. And we see that increasingly this is a very competitive factor, and that's why we more and more focus also on these non-technological innovations.
Thank you. I'll continue, and I have a question from Mr. Erser, but first I want to share a little story I heard yesterday at the reception in the Rathaus, and I actually got some numbers from somebody who visited recently the plant of Volkswagen in Bratislava, and I got two numbers. Regarding the factor of automation the plant currently has, that was 65% of the work in the plant is automated, and the person also shared the goal, or what actually today is possible in a plant in Volkswagen, and this would be 80 to 85% of automation of all work inside the plant. Coming back to my question, you in your talk you said about you talked about the difference in where on the scale in the transition to 4.0 different countries, regions, and companies stay. Do you think that it is easy or even possible to keep up with the leaders, because the digitalization always moves forward faster, and if you are in the back, that is possible to keep up?
Actually, thank you for the question. Actually, as mentioned, countries are different, regions are different, and the companies are different. But there are some common points, like we call them verticals, the sectors, right? Some sectors are more lucky than the other ones because of the great of the automation which they have today. As an example, automotive industry is one of the forerunner regarding the subject because they are really automated in comparison with the other sectors. The second one could be the electronics manufacturing. They are also well automated. Then the third could be household. And the wash machines factories, for example, they are much more automated than other sectors. And pharma is also a pioneer because they are very much automated today. And for example, how you call it in English, confection, textile, not the textile, not the sewing part, is much more human today. So it will be very hard for them to speed up as automotive, for example. So simply, the sectors are will try to automate, as you just mentioned, 65 to 85%. 100 will be never, and there is no need for 100. But beginning from 40% of automation, it may take 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to come up to 85% of automation. Then some work will be left to human, actually. As I mentioned yesterday, the third light-out factory of Turkey is now in production. This not the whole factory, but a part of the factory. But the lights are closed, so no human anymore in the factory. So if you look from that aspect, it seems to be a risk for human. But on the other way, by the first revolution, the workforce need increased because before the first revolution there was no workers, or there were no factory workers. They were all working on the farms, right, before that. So the workforce need increased by the first revolution. The same happened by the second revolution with the electricity, the production, the serial production concept came to life, and the need for workers increased exponentially, not 2 or 3 times, maybe 100 times, 1,000 times. The same happened with the electronics by the third revolution. As the automation came, the need for workforce didn't decrease. The other way around, it increased because the production could be made cheaper, which means that the demand increased. For that reason, the workforce need also increased with electronics. And why should it be the other way around for the fourth one? So it will happen exactly the same way. I personally believe, as an optimist, we should not fear about I4.0. The other way around, we have to be happy that it's coming actually, because maybe the demand for the muscle, human muscle, will be less, that's true, but on the other part, the need for the brain, which is very good for the human being actually, will increase. So that means that the job titles are going to change, but not the number of the jobs. So I personally feel very confident that I4.0 is very in line with the human being's acceleration.
Thank you for the insight. I believe Mr. Sommer has a comment on that.
Maybe 2, 3 remarks. The first one is, I think, and also what Kerstin mentioned in a way, I think we're in a turning point whether robots will take over or whether robots will support what we do. And I believe it's rather the second thing. And we have some anecdotal evidence. One of the largest car manufacturers, Toyota, he started employing again more people in production because he realized that this continuous improvement process stopped because only relying on algorithms didn't work. So there we could see that the human brain and this thinking out of the box is extremely important also for becoming more and more efficient in production. And we see in more and more companies that this is the case, and these companies that invest a lot into digitization tend to employ more people, like Magna or like many others. And it seems that these companies that need to catch up, they have problems also with the employees. And of course there's a shift also, and we will need more and more people in IT, information and communication technologies in other sectors, and there will be more jobs we don't even know about, like app developer and data analyst, etc. That is clear, but many more jobs, and this is something we cannot predict. But I would also assume that we will have a lot of different jobs that we don't know today.
Just a short add. We both are talking about the situation in Austria and in Germany. Automation is done. Automation, which is for cost savings, is done in Austria and in Germany. People lost already their jobs there. So if you go through an Austrian factory, everything you can do and it's affordable with robots or with machines is done. So we are really on the step to Industry 4.0, and that can create jobs. If you transform from Industry 2.0 to Industry 3.0 with increasing the automation, jobs will get lost at first, as we had it in Austria. People are getting employed more and more, yeah, and I'm positive about the Industrial Revolution as well. But at first we have to have a look on the impact of the people who get lost from the increase of automation and not digitalization.
May I add something? I I just forgot to mention that there's another aspect as well, besides the ones which has already mentioned. You know, there are many mega trends going on the earth. So one of them is that in China, in Africa, in India, for example, millions of people are coming from very poor state to the middle-waged or middle-earning state. So they will need industrial products in the future which they couldn't afford today. Shoes, toothpaste, as simple examples, okay? These are billions of people. We are not speaking about millions, we are speaking about billions of people. Just in 10, 20 years, we will be 9 billion on the earth, okay? So there will be a great demand in the future for the industrial goods, which the demand will increase by factors. Exponentially is going to increase because of this mega trend going on the earth. And with the help of the robots, not only robots, but with the help of the digitalization, after automation, digitalization, the costs of the industrial goods will dramatically decrease because it will be possible to produce much more by spending much less, which means that the prices are going to go down. On the other hand, the demand is going to increase and the prices will go down, which will mean, at the end of the day, more workers. For that reason, I'm very optimistic.
Ich möchte nur auf Deutsch sagen und den Kollegen bitten, dass er übersetzt, dass die Worte, die meine Kollegen jetzt ausgesprochen haben, auch meine Gedanken aussprechen. Und ich möchte mich bei euch bedanken, dass ihr das auf Englisch vorgetragen habt.
Professor Bauer wanted to thank the panel that they presented the shared beliefs of him also in English. And I would like to continue with a question, Amadef, but from this point on, I think we start also the free discussion. So if anyone in the audience or in the podium has a comment or a question, just please give me a sign and we will pass around the microphone. Professor Bauer, I would like to ask you about again about the main statement of your presentation, the end of the world or a better work organization for all, especially in terms of how Argentina plays a role in the Industry 4.0 movement.
Danke für die Frage und natürlich werde ich bitten, dass sie übersetzt. Argentinien ist ein Land, das technologisch sehr fortgeschritten ist, aber auch die totalen Probleme der Länder, die weit entfernt vom Zentrum des Globus sind, besitzt. Und wir können beide Situationen dort sehr stark erkennen.
Yes, thank you for the question. Argentina is a country that technologically is very advanced, but we can see also the other sides of that topic.
Als Beispiel können wir sagen, dass das nicht ein automatisches Werk von Volkswagen, sondern das automatischste Werk von Volkswagen, das ist das Getriebewerk von ganzen Konzernen international in Argentinien steht.
And in terms of the technological advance, we can say that today the most advanced plant in Volkswagen for producing gears for all the cars of the company is placed in Córdoba in Argentina.
Das heißt, höchste Technologie, höchstes Level von Technologie lebt wenige Kilometer entfernt von Produktionsformen, die total Indien und anderen Ländern entspricht.
That means that the technological standard of such a plant is right by side other companies that that are not that advanced in technology in the transition. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the board at this point? If not, I would ask the audience if there are any comments or questions. Okay, right now there are no questions. Please give me a sign if you want to ask something. I would like to ask an open question, which everybody of you can answer if you want. And I want to pick up a statement that Mr. Sommer Mr. Sommer said that. Excuse me. A lot of statements made today. That was about the continuous improvement which has to happen and which the companies are doing, and that continuous improvement is something currently no machine can do, that human tasks and the human challenge to improve the system as it is at the moment and make a better and more efficient system for the next day in the next production process. And the question would be how this fact that this improvement is needed is translated into education systems that might be presented by the policy or done by the corporate companies themselves.
The system we have in Austria is called vocational training, where part of the education is being done in a school and the other part is being done right in the company. And so young people learn from the very beginning how a production, for instance, works and what are the real problems, etc. And I think that is very important, because this understanding of the processes is extremely important. And when we talk to companies and ask them what they need from people, rarely ever they mention it should be electronics, engineering, etc., because they assume that the candidates will have it on both. It could be a university degree or it could be a degree on vocational training, for instance. But what they mention is rather this complex problem solving, it's intercultural competencies, and it's also this problem solving capacities, complex problem solving capacities. And I think here everybody from primary school onwards should contribute to really foster these kind of competencies. And I think this is key, and that's not just key in a company, it's also key for the society as a whole. And the second issue I would like to raise is that more and more we talk about handling of data, and there we also, I think we also should start very early, so that also people in primary school understand or start understanding what it means if I put a photo on Facebook or these kind of things, and that they understand that not everything what they find in the internet is right and true. And so we have to start in the very early stages, maybe even in kindergarten, to get an idea of the value of data, but also on the downsides of using data.
I would like to add another topic or another view on Industry 4.0. Somebody has to program our machines, and nobody talks about the ethics behind that. The self-driving cars, who programs them, what they do if a child is running on the street and I'm driving there? Or I'm not driving, I'm just inside the car. So who decides if the car crashes and I maybe will die, or if we run over the child? So who makes these decisions? Who's responsible for the output? Who's responsible when the robot is killing an employee? And nobody talks about that. We talk about interventions, but the problems with automatization and in Industry 4.0 digitalization is another topic.
I want to come back to education. I think if we speak about 4.0, the weakest point is education. Why? Because the world is going to be much more complex than as we have it today. So to be able to manage that much complex, exponentially complex world, we need the brain power much more than we need it today. Because the human muscles will not be an issue anymore. The brain will be the issue. So the vocational education plus the university education will be much more important than as it is today. Just as an example, some years ago, coding, coding you all know, right? Was done by the children of age of 9 around with the new methodologies and new softwares. Today it's around 4.5, age of 4.5, let's say 5. So our children has to learn coding by age of 5. We were not able to speak about something like that 3, 4, 5 years ago. So there is a radical change. So the education has to radically change as well to be able to cope with this digital changing of the world.
Ja, ich hätte eine Frage vielleicht für die Kollegen von der Gewerkschaft, aber eigentlich für alle Kollegen. Jeder ist hier gewohnt, dass wenn er ein Auto kauft, er für das Auto große Steuern zahlt. Wäre es möglich, dass in Europa auf eine Automatisation oder auf einen Roboter eine Sozialversicherung zu denken ist?
I repeat the question. Everybody in Europe or in Austria, if they buy a car, they're used to pay taxes. And the question of Professor Bauer was if the policymakers or the trade union think that in Austria it would be possible that a robot pays social insurance.
Yeah, it will be really nice, but I think it won't solve our tax problems. I think not the robot is the problem. The problem is that companies, where does companies pay their taxes? Who's responsible for the education of our employees? That's the state, and the state has to pay for the education. Everything should be free, and it should be perfect, and programming with 5. But who will pay that? So I think we have to solve our tax issues with the big national players at first, and then we can talk about taxes for robots, because I think there are new studies that say that that's not our main problem.
I read an article, I believe from Sweden. As you just mentioned, taxes for robots, which may make sense at the beginning, because by the transition from 2 to 3, unemployment comes. This we know. So from 3 to 4, I mean, robots we have today as well. They are not called robots, they are called cobots, cooperative, collaborative, communicative robots. They are the different style, let's say, but nevertheless, they are all robots. And because if a robot creates an unemployment, then the company should pay tax, which the money is going to be paid to the unemployed human. At the beginning, it may make sense. I mean, the people begin to discuss on that.
Maybe 2 remarks, but this is a difficult discussion, at least in Austria. But I think what is behind that notion is that how to finance in the future the social systems in any country. And the second point is increasingly we get services. We do not need to pay cash, but we pay with providing data. So if we have a Google search, for instance, it's free for us, but of course Google can use the data to do something else with that. And we see a shift in the economy away from cash towards free services, and then the currency is data. And I think we do need to find solutions, always with the notion in the background how to finance the social systems, because if we do not have any social systems, we do not have social peace, basically. And that's the notion we have, at least in Austria or in the German-speaking world.
I believe there was a question in the audience.
Thank you. So far the discussion has been very interesting. We talked about technological improvement, economical impacts, also the scientific improvement, social, ethical, and what about the environment? Could you please give us your valuable opinions? How do you foresee the future of transition in industry? Because every era in the industrial development has brought some impact on the environment, which was always actually tried to overcome afterwards, not thinking beforehand and taking some precautions and measurements with standards or some kind of, I don't know, environmental activities. So how do you foresee the future? Are there enough research about it, or studies or work done by government or independent organizations like NGOs? Or how can we be more aware of this transition in the industry?
This is an excellent question. Thank you so much. It's very difficult to answer that. On the one hand, we see that a better use of existing resources and a better use of energy, of course, is good for the environment. On the other hand, the implementation of new technologies might pose new risks. And I take 3D printing as an example. Suddenly you have dusts, and maybe you don't know what these dusts could mean with a certain particle diameter, etc. So on the one hand, it's more resource efficiency. On the other hand, the new technologies might also come up with new problems that we need to tackle later on, and we do not know. And of course, the question of how much energy is used is a big question, because on the one hand, we see in production that the energy consumption goes down, but if you think about new technologies like blockchain, they are very energy intensive. So again, here we have to see, is that a final solution, or maybe we come up with better, environmentally more friendly solutions?
I'm still on the optimist side. And I 4.0 promises do more with less, principally. Okay, do more with less. Less means, in this case, electrical energy. The need for the electrical energy will be for sure less, because the automated robots can produce more than a human in much a precise way. So it's very obvious that the energy need, if the demand is going to stay the same, the energy need, of course, will decrease. This means that the consuming of the earth will be less. So if we can consume less earth, this is very environmental. So at the end of the day, I personally believe that this will help environment more than what we believe today, even if we are going to have the blockchain.
Maybe an example from Austria. We are talking about nanotechnologies and smart clothing and smart fabrics. And nobody knows what happens with the nanotechnologies when you wash them and so on. So what happens to the water system, and therefore Austria, the government made a huge program to make findings on all these questions you asked and I am talking about. So there is something going on. Companies are not happy with that. So because in Austria we try to forbid things before we know what really happened. So and it's not the worst way. But I think we shouldn't forget on this aspect.
Hi. That was a really good question. And recently, I'm going to have a talk in half an hour. I'm going to talk about the energy efficient scheduling, for example, production scheduling. There is a recent trend everywhere. I was in China in July making research and talking about how can we to make our production scheduling problems, the energy efficient. So there is a very, very growing interest in, the scheduling or vehicle routing problems and then, the distribution problems. So this green idea, environmental idea is getting more and more, the important because we're gonna, in the future, in 50 years, you're not gonna have the petrol maybe, so what are they gonna do in that case, so there are ways to, there are approaches, new approaches, green approaches, especially in production. Recently, it's a growing, the very interesting research dimension. So I'm going to explain in one problem in my speech. So it is possible to, develop some production systems which is environmentally or, is green and then a bit less energy, you can make the same production, okay? So this is really interesting. So this is a very there is a growing interest in this kind of, the environmental or, the green production system. So we have to consider that one also in Europe. People are working on that, I know. In the literature recently, there is a growing interest in this subject, and then, we're gonna be successful, hopefully, in the near future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the statement. We're looking forward to your talk. I believe. One small comment, and then we will finish the slot, and I think we have a short break, and we can finish the discussion at the short break or afterwards at the lunch break.
Thank you for a very efficient roundtable. And I'm thinking experimental learning-based knowledge system can be integrated intelligent production in order to minimize or use the production steps and time. For large enterprises, the question is yes, because they are already ready for the transition, Industry 4.0. But as for the small and medium enterprises, they are afraid workers around the robots make them afraid. They are thinking, because environment, Gökçen asked a very good question, environment is very important for this transition. I think the answer should be, as an engineering faculty member, because I know the cases in Turkey, I'm working in the Turkey universities, and we should integrate university and the industry collaboration. We need real collaboration. We shouldn't sit in our offices. We should go to industry to increase their consciousness, because they are feeling unemployment. They are right, but we should say we need their brain. They shouldn't use the muscles, okay, and it's very difficult environment for the workers. We should increase their consciousness. I think our responsibility is very important in this center of the very important subject, very crucial subject. Since yesterday, thank you very much, I get consciousness, really, and I will try to transfer my knowledge to the industry when I go back to Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. Are there any comments from the board? Yeah.
Recently, I came across a study from Ireland, and they identified in various countries, not including Austria, not including Turkey, that the impact of research is the biggest one or the highest one when there's a collaboration with industry. Second highest when researchers cooperate on an international basis, and the lowest one when there's just one single researcher in his own office. And I think there are a lot of programs, both on the European level, probably also in Turkey, where there is an incentive by public funding to foster the cooperation between industry and research. And I think this is extremely important because that also changes mindsets on both sides.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now, after the last comment from Professor Bauer, close the session.
Yes, I will see. We construct robots, but we know that a robot has not the passion to solution a problem, and a human has the passion and the possibility to solution the problem, and this possibility that now we see, we can solution it all.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank again the members of the board for taking the time today and for engaging in a very, very interesting discussion, and also thank you to the audience for participating. And we'll now close this session, and we're looking forward to interesting talks in the rest of the day. Thank you very much.